there are a number of threats on different levels, but if we're talking about terrorism, I mean, the major threat is still Islamicism. There are other threats out there, but that is the one that I can tell you occupies the security apparatus most regularly in terms of actual terrorist threats.
He said Islamicism. He used the I word. Prime Minister Stephen Harper did, warning homegrown terrorism is the single greatest threat to Canada today. And he's already drawing heat from the left for using the I word. From the NDP's foreign affairs critic, Paul Dewar. The 10th anniversary of 9/11 should be a time for reflection on how we can build a more inclusive society to end extremism. Let's all guard against knee-jerk demonizing and overheated rhetoric. Here's another example of the backlash. Paul Champ.
That it's a serious risk in Canada.
That Islamic terrorism.
That's right, Islamic terrorism, pardon me. Islamic terrorism is not a serious threat in Canada. And, you know, despite, frankly, the excesses of the measures that governments have used to fight terrorism in the last 10 years, many experts say that, if anything, that has increased the risk of terrorism because it creates resentment amongst targeted communities. But I think now, 10 years after the 9/11 tragedy, I think it's really time to turn the page on that kind of thinking.
When you say excess.
Right, terrorism is not a threat. Rhetoric is a threat. Paul Champ, by the way, one of the main lawyers in the effort to say that Canadian troops were complicit in the torture of Taliban prisoners. You can draw your own conclusions on who Champ is championing for. I get a little frustrated by all this political correctness at the best of times, especially on an important subject like public safety, going to extreme lengths to not cause the most minor offense to the most marginal of people. But when it interferes with my family's safety, and the safety of honest, hard-working Canadians, it makes me mad. So for more on this, I'd like to turn to Salim Mansur, author of Delectable Lie, a liberal repudiation of multiculturalism. Hey, Salim.
Hi, Charles. Thanks for having me.
Okay, this business of offending, and I say the most marginal of people because I believe only the most marginal of people could be offended at the notion that the Prime Minister has actually said publicly what everybody says privately, which is the Islamist threat, that is radical Islam, is a threat. How on earth any responsible public servant could say that it's unwise for him to say it and it actually puts the country in jeopardy? I don't get it. My hands are up.
Charles, it is so refreshing now to have a Prime Minister, head of a government of one of the G8 countries, which is Canada is, to speak and say things and see things as it is, and not with some rosy colored eyeglasses that our previous prime ministers were so used to doing, and mislead and misinterpret and misguide the people. The reality is out there, and we all understand the reality. I'm from that part of the world, and I have the pulse of that part of the world. And the problem is Islamist terrorism. Islamist terrorism is the biggest challenge in terms of public security that the Western world is facing in the 21st century.
Mr. Mansour, we've got a conference taking place in Montreal, a religious conference, second global conference on world's religions, University of Montreal. And you've got a Dr. Sharma there. He organized the event. He compares religion to fire. It can cook your dinner or burn your house down. Is that what religion is supposed to be about? I mean, is that real religion? You know, being a pyromaniac, does that make you a deeply faithful person? Help me with the burn the house down business, because I think a lot of Canadians are bothered by that.
Well, I don't know what Dr. Sharma is getting at, but if the matter is that there are religions that can burn your house down, we are dealing with that problem, and that problem is coming up. I mean, the commemoration of that problem is coming up in a few days' time, the 10th anniversary of 9/11. And I've written extensively about this, Charles, of how Islam has been perverted beyond recognition. I'm a Muslim, I'm a practicing Muslim, you know. I believe in Islam, but not the Islam that is emanating out right now from the Middle East, in particular from Saudi Arabia, in Pakistan, in Afghanistan. And it is, in some sense, the problem of Islam, or Islamism to be more precise, that is a political ideology that dresses itself in a form of religion. But if you're talking about religion, and especially religion in the third millennium in the 21st century, religion should be a matter of personal faith, of spiritual direction, of individual and their belief, and not something to drive a political agenda.
Well, Mr. Mansur, if somebody wants to burn our house down, I really don't care what religious garment he's wearing, whether we're Muslims or Jews or atheists or Catholics or Christians or whatever. If somebody wants to burn our house down, the Canadian house, we should not give them the respect that we ordinarily give people who have religious values. Burning my house down is not a value.
Absolutely, and you know, I fully share your view, and I've been writing about this and saying things about this. You know, the Islamists, or the Muslim fundamentalists, the radical Muslims, have basically wrecked their own country, their own culture, their own civilization, from Algeria and Libya and Morocco and North Africa, Tunisia, to the mountains of Pakistan, you know, and the Indus Valley, this vast chunk of the world, which constitute about 1 billion people, is in a total cultural and civilizational wreck. And it has been brought about by these people. And now they want to ruin other cultures and other civilization as they're trying to push their agenda. And this conference that you mentioned in Montreal, under normal circumstances, is something to celebrate, that, you know, people of faith and people who study faith, scholars, academics, journalists, who study religion as part of our human dimension, are getting together to talk about religion and share its commonality and share the views about how what is apparently different or distinct still at its core share common values. But there is a huge problem in this conference that is taking shape in Montreal, and it is with the agenda of this conference and the people who are participating in it, particularly Mr. Tariq Ramadan, or Professor Tariq Ramadan, who is the grandson of the founder of Muslim Brotherhood, Hassan al-Banna. His father, Saeed Ramadan, was one of the agents of Muslim Brotherhood, and who was financed by Saudi Arabia, setting up his shop in Geneva, Switzerland. Now, this man, Tariq Ramadan, is the most pleasant face out there to seduce the non-Muslims with the idea that there is no problem in the Muslim world. In fact, the problem in the Muslim world and the problem with Islam or Islamism that we are talking about is actually a creation of the Western intellectuals and the Western minds, or the anti-Muslim. And nothing could be further from the truth. And in this agenda, Charles, they are putting forward a document in which they are calling for a suspension of any critical discussion of any religion. Now,
Salim Mansur, I've got to get out at that point, but we'll bring you back. But I take what you're saying quite seriously. This conference is saying that the arsonist is not a problem. The firefighter is the problem. We've got to be on the side of the firefighter, sir. Thank you so much for your help, as always.
Thank you.
Salim Mansur. We want to hear from you on this or any other topic, folks. Be a part of Adler Nation. Send us email. CharlesAdler@sunmedia.ca. We read them all because your opinions matter to us a great deal. Coming